Welcome.
2.
What are we here to talk about today?
Oh, you know, I had a quote I wanted to share with you. I heard someone once say, healing can be so hard when your inner child wants love, your teenage self wants revenge, and your current self only wants peace. And I feel like that's why like the feeling conflicted and the feeling like you don't know what you want, and you know the struggle, like this internal struggle, is because like different parts of you need different things.
Yeah.
And it just put it into such like the perfect wording, I think.
Yeah, I really like that as well. It's like all those different parts of you haven't actually had the closure that they need to not still be fighting for attention inside of you.
In different ways though as well. It's like the child version of you just wants the love and appreciation without like the expectations. The teenage version is angry that they went through it, and then me just now, I just want peace, not problems.
Yeah,
it's like,
literally.
everyone leave me alone. But it's like you still have those other parts of you that are like battling, and then sometimes you feel peaceful and just like don't want the drama or be involved, and then sometimes you're like, actually, like I deserve my closure and I deserve people to understand how they treated me and that wasn't right. And it's like you're constantly battling all, and that just like puts it into perspective that it's actually different parts of you like actually growing up is still inside you, you know, because people talk about inner childs all the time, and I never really could grasp what they meant, because you're grown. I'm not a child anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, I found it really hard to like imagine that the child version of me still exists.
Yeah. But then see, when you say, oh, you're grown, you're not a child anymore, that's just kind of like physically, right?
Yeah. And I think that I focus so much on the physical, and I guess it's also the expectation that when you're an adult societally, you should technically know what you're doing and know like where you are in life and have everything figured out. Whereas that still like little version of inside you is still there. And I think that's what I learned, is that unless you actually like listen to that and like tend to that, you're not really going to feel fulfilled and like move past things that you just buried, because it is just buried really if you're not actually dealing with it.
Yeah. And like it's not even just buried. I feel like probably a lot of your inner child related problems are the root cause of all your like adult problems like today. Like especially with money, I think a lot of our experiences with money have come from like how we've perceived money growing up, what we've heard about, like how we've heard money being spoken about and stuff, like all these little things when we were younger. And they say as well that your brain is still taking loads of stuff in for the first like 7 years of your life, and then that forms all of your like opinions and your habits, and then your habits like form your entire experience of life, right? So I think I don't think it's necessarily buried. I actually think it's like very alive through like everything that you experience now. But then how do you actually, because when I remember when I first started learning about personal development and all this kind of stuff, and self-help, like start getting into it, and there were references being made to inner child, and I always used to get confused as to how you actually get down to what your inner child wants, like what that little unhealed child inside of you is actually like looking for, and what kind of closure they need. Like, how do you get to the bottom of that?
I struggle with that too, because I'm almost like, the time has passed. Like that girl can't get what she needed, because we can't go back to that point in time. And I almost feel like, because I've seen videos on this and people are like, well, if you're in it, like your child version of you didn't get the love that they wanted, or wasn't just like you had a lot of conditional love growing up, then you have to like basically give yourself the love that your child, like the child version of you wanted but didn't get. But I'm like, I don't understand how that's healing, because she still didn't get it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I can do it for myself now, but that is adult me. That's why I'm trying to like differentiate the two. I'm like, anything I do now, that is for adult me. I don't understand
like the
how
consequences
that's for
have happened already.
So I still don't get it, but maybe that's something that I'll come to learn, and I just need to like read up on more. I'm sure there's loads of books that probably go into it in a lot more depth than a TikTok video that I've just watched, but I guess that's just one part of the healing journey, I guess, because I am on a journey in a sense where I feel like there's certain patterns, or like there's certain ways that I've grown up that I don't want to repeat. Like, say I had my own family, I don't want to be, there's certain things that I don't want to do, and there's a certain way I don't want to be, but almost when that's all you know and that's what you've been brought up around, it's very hard to like switch that off. So, you know, like your teenage self is angry. What if I'm more angry than upset as a child? Do you know what I mean? Like, what do I tackle?
Oh yeah, like what problem comes first?
Yeah.
Oh, that's hard to... Well, I guess it's like, it's more looking at the problems or the ways you're behaving now, and like in this day and age, and what of those behaviors you're finding are like causing you the most chaos, or like are wreaking havoc in your life, because maybe the result of whatever unhealed inner child need you have is like a smaller thing that you have, like a smaller problem or a smaller bad habit that you have now that isn't really affecting your life too much. But then the one that maybe you've got a lot of resentment from your years as a teenager, and that resentment is now like, I don't know,
Held on to it.
Yeah, held on, and maybe making it more difficult for you to bond with certain people in your life. Then maybe that's something to focus on more.
Yeah.
It's like what of the problems that have resulted from those issues are really big right now.
I get that's a huge self-awareness thing, I think.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Actually identifying what is your problem.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you can admit that you have a problem, because for me it's definitely the anger. I know, like you mentioned before, that you just don't, like, I'm an angry person.
I know I've mentioned that I'm not now, but like I used to be like very angry, like very emotionally frustrated.
Yeah, I feel like very recently I've started, because I feel like there's lots of different reasons for it, and when there's lots of different reasons for the way you do something, it's even harder to actually, once you tackle one, it's like, well, it's not fully gone, or like you've not fully progressed, because there's now another issue that you need to tackle and like sort that out before you kind of fully get over it. And I feel like there's so many like different reasons that I try and tackle one, and then I'm like, no, but I'm still this like really resentful, angry person for like a different reason now. But you like, it just takes so much digging and so much like effort to undo it, and just reframe your mindset, I think, towards things.
Yeah.
Or just acknowledge it, because I know a lot of my problems, like with being angry, to be honest, it's not even because like certain things have happened that I'm remembering. It's just I get triggered by like random stuff that I don't really know where it's come from until I have to like really think about it and take the time, and then I'm like, oh, that's why I'm feeling like that. Like, you kind of, the penny drops after a while, but it takes so much effort to get to the point where you actually like establish the root of the issue. So many people don't do that work, and it actually really annoys me, because it's like there's so many unhealed people walking on this earth that like still create families and still do all these things, and they don't sort themselves out, and then they just pass it on.
But then, like you said, like healing requires self-awareness.
A lot of
and
people
like,
don't have it.
But self-awareness is like, it is tiring. It's so tiring, and like constantly trying to fix yourself, and like constantly trying to like find all these problems and then find out the root cause of them. You kind of knock your own
confidence, because you realise how problematic you are as a person. Maybe problematic's the wrong word, but like you have issues, but we all have issues. You could have the most like blessed upbringing, but you will still have some kind of event in your life that's happened that's affected you. You don't always have to have this like really traumatic, like bad things will happen to you, like bad people are around you. This life happens. But I feel like there's a big difference between, so we all have these issues, but there's a big difference between you acknowledging that and trying to like overcome it versus just burying it and passing on to the next generation. Yeah. Which I feel like happens too many times.
But I think even burying it, I think is not a very conscious act for a lot of people. I think like if you think about you, when you said, okay, so you kept getting angry, but then you sat down, reflected on why you're getting angry, and then you're able to kind of like understand what's behind that. I feel like for the majority of people, and me included, when I was a very angry person, I would just get angry. I would get triggered by things, get angry. The anger would subside, and I wouldn't think twice about why that happened or what triggered it.
Yeah, same for a long time.
Yeah, and then that's just a cycle that happens. But I don't even know what triggered the self-awareness for me. Maybe I was just tired of being angry.
I think I got to that point as well, but also I could tell that it was affecting the people around me, and it's just not nice feeling like you're not in control of your own like emotions, like your own emotional state. And I got tired of like then feeling bad out of how I acted because I was so angry, because it's just such an emotional response, and it's obviously because something's triggered you, but then you react disproportionately to what the actual issue was a lot of the time. And then I was like, oh, like I shouldn't have done that. Or like you sometimes like you, if you snap at someone, or you just take things badly when you reflect on it, and then you realize actually it wasn't that deep. But then I'm like, I can't keep doing that. Like there's got to be a time where I'm just not so sensitive to things. I think I was just very sensitive to things, but then but also for me, I think it's not even like certain things that people would say. It's just a certain time of the month. Like I know PMS is like a very common thing for girls, but I just get it to a new level where, and I've started tracking that recently as well, properly, because it's something I've struggled with for a really long time, but I never really, it became one of those things that I struggled with like more so than was normal, because a lot of the women around me, like even at uni, nobody seemed to have been like was affected by the period or like PMSing as badly as I was. I was so sensitive to the mood swings and like hormone changes and stuff, but after a certain amount of time it just became normal to me, so I didn't make any effort to change it. I was just like, well, this is the way I am. But now I'm like, but nobody else is like that, and it's literally detrimenting me so much because it's happened so often. So I started looking into it, and the only reason I really started to understand it is because of online and people talking about it, which is why, again, I get so frustrated that in our community it's so frowned upon to talk about a simple thing like periods. Like we go through it every single month of every single year. Like it's like eating, it's like breathing, and it's just such a weird topic. And for so long, like you're not allowed to speak about it, so you don't understand what's going on in your body. You don't understand why you're acting in certain ways. You don't understand that could be the root cause of all your, like, majority of your problems. And then it just festers and festers, and then it gets to a point where, like, I'm so grateful for the internet in so many ways, because so many things we weren't allowed to talk about or were bad to talk about now is so out in the open, is so normalised, that you can just learn about things so freely without even having to worry about other people knowing, or, like, whether other people are discussing it or not, happy about you knowing about it. It's just there. So that's when I think since I've been consuming content like that, or just like understanding my body more, I've been able to like rein it in and like actually control how I feel, or like just, I think even just acknowledging how you feel sometimes, rather than like trying to push those emotions or like being confused about why you feel a certain way, makes it so much easier than just, because if I'm acknowledging that, oh, I'm angry, like, why, then it goes to, well, why am I angry? And then, well, what actually happened? Was it that deep? Like, was it actually an issue that I'm this infuriated about? But I never used to do that. So we would lash out, and then it'd just be a cycle of, like, being really angry, being really guilty about being angry, and then I'd be angry again, and it'd just go in a cycle. But I'd like to think I've broken out of that a little bit.
I started tracking my cycle a while ago, but I've also gotten really in tune with like my body, and I actually think it's so validating sometimes to know that whatever symptoms you have, they're actually symptoms of something, and they're not like things wrong with you, if that makes sense. It's like very validating to have a reason for why certain things happen, and I think tracking my periods really helped with that, because I realized I get super emotional like the week leading up to my period. I went to see my sister in Amsterdam recently, and this is such a stupid story. So we were both cycling, and the sun was setting. It was like golden hour, and we were cycling next to each other, and she made me get on my bike to like cycle with her into like where she parks her bike, and we were laughing in the moment because I was tired. My butt was really hurting from being on the bike all day, so I got off, then I got on because she made me cycle for this like 20-second ride, and she started laughing about it. And like as she was laughing about it, this like gust of wind came through, and like she was like laughing, like, and the golden hour was on her, and like her hair was like flowing a little bit. Yeah, it was like a movie moment. And I looked across, and I just like did this like mental snapshot of this movie moment, and then I had this really quick flash forward to me and her being like older, like really old, like maybe like grey in our 80s or something, like talking about like just like remembering that time, like that moment. And it made me so emotional. Like as I saw her cycling, I wanted to start crying, and I got the wee notification on my phone to be like, your period is coming up in 7 days. And I was like, that's probably why I feel like crying from this like 0.5 second moment of my life. I get really emotional these days, but I used to get very angry. But I also wanted to talk about like, see these feelings when they like overcome it, like especially anger when they overcome you. I saw this TikTok from Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he was talking about how feelings, I'm gonna paraphrase this / completely butcher this, but basically things like anger, when your body feels them, you have no control over feeling them for like 1 to 2, maybe 1 to 3 seconds, and any longer than that, it's you choosing to hold on to that feeling. And that was a really interesting thought for me, because like even with me feeling emotional about seeing my sister in that one moment, it's like those emotions overcame me all of a sudden in an uncontrollable manner for probably max like 3 seconds, and any longer than that I was feeling emotional was me holding on to that and like not letting it go, like actively and consciously not letting it go. And it's really interesting to think about that with anger sometimes, because like sometimes if something triggers you as well, you want to be angry.
But I also feel like anger is such, you pin the anger on a certain thing that maybe like you're already irritated about, because I think like the moments that I get angry, I could be angry about something that if that happened a week prior I would have been totally fine with, but it's only because I would have thought it was just not that big of a deal at the time, even though it was probably something irritating. But my tolerance to dealing with irritating things just kind of maxes out at that time. So I end up, but I know what you're saying. I think it doesn't really linger on. That's why the guilt sets in, because it's like, oh, I reacted in that moment and now I realise that it passed and I shouldn't have reacted in that way. But then you can't like take an action back, or you can't like go back and react differently. So I also read a quote about anger, and I guess it's different in different scenarios, but it was something along the lines of anger is seen as a negative emotion, but it's actually a protective emotion, because it's protecting you from like, obviously you're feeling anger towards a situation for a good reason, like you're obviously feeling defensive over something, like you're not being treated right or something's not quite right. And it's actually protecting you, because the anger like forced you to kind of feel that discomfort. And like I don't think anger is really a negative emotion. It's just how in control of your own emotions you are. And sometimes it's hard, because it's like twofold. Like if it is just the wrong time of the month for me, and I feel like I'm better now at controlling it. But before I just used to like be so I just didn't have a rein on any of my emotions. Like I'd be super upset about ridiculous things, and I think it's just the confusion of not understanding why made it worse. I think now that I know why, and I'm validated, because a PMS like symptom was always joked about as well. It wasn't, people knew of it and I knew of it, but it was almost, because people ridiculed it, it was almost like, well, yeah, it happens, but it's not that big of a deal. But when you're feeling it, it's like such a big deal. It's like such a huge thing, and you almost trivialize it because everyone else does, and you don't take it seriously. But then I've started taking it seriously, because it is serious. Like you can't just,
your literal emotions changing.
Yeah, it's hard to deal with, especially because I've been tracking it. And what's funny is I didn't understand the menstrual cycle at all up until like maybe a few weeks ago, maybe like a month ago. And I didn't realise that there's actual different phases where you feel a certain type of way. Like your hormones are always changing, not just when your period hits or like the week before. There's other phases of the cycle. So there's like the whole like 14 days before you get your period where you start feeling like really low and like irritable, and like that's the PMS time. But then I didn't realise that there's, after your period, there's the actual time where everything spikes. I mean, it obviously makes sense because it's got to be balance at some point. But it's just like the fact that it happens at specific times, and then knowing that there's like the follicular phase after you actually have your period, and you have an energy boost and everything, like you're just like on cloud nine, and you're really productive and motivated about life, and all that kicks in. But it's all science, and you just don't even consider that that is the science of your body. You just think that, oh, it's just this thing that I have to deal with, but you almost invalidate your experiences because people don't talk about it properly. They're just like, oh, she's PMSing, or like, oh, you're just gonna
I hate that
you're
as well.
feeling moody. Like, it's so much more complex than that. And I think now that I've actually been paying attention to what phase of the cycle, not just like when my period's coming, it's gone down to like what phase of my cycle am I in. And it's funny because like there's certain things that I know I get irritated about, but they obviously affect me a lot less when I'm in like the phase where like my hormones are balanced and everything's in sync. And then when I know I'm hitting like my luteal phase or like coming up to my period, I'm so irritable about things. But now I'm like, I can pin it on something.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
that
Every
is
reason.
why.
Yeah.
And it makes me a lot less, it just kind of dissipates the anger, because it's almost like, well, yeah, I feel like that now, but I know it's passing.
Luteal phases can kill. I hate them.
Have you been quite like in tune with like the actual phases of your cycle and stuff for a while?
I got into a period of like period of like keeping track of those phases as well, because I was trying to like line them up to my workouts, because I can actually tell as well when it's like, I don't know if it's luteal phase, but it's like the end of the second half of the luteal phase. And my workouts, like I'll be sweating during my warm up. I can't lift anything. I can't like do what I could do 3 times over 3 weeks ago. And I've always wondered that sometimes, just from going to the gym and training and stuff. I've always wondered why some workouts I'm literally sweating from the moment I get into the gym, and there's some workouts I don't break a sweat.
So fascinating. Like,
it's so
how
weird.
Your body can change.
Yeah.
But why aren't we told about this more? Like, it just blows my mind. Like, we have this education at school, but it's just not it.
Yeah.
It just ain't it.
Well, I remember them teaching us about like menstrual cycles and stuff.
The 28-day thing. Like, yeah, I remember like vague
Who's
bits.
this 28 days also?
Yeah. I think that's just like meant to be an average, I think. But it's stuff that you probably learn too young. Like, I almost feel like they should actually do this at an age where you're not all giggly about, oh, periods, because you haven't got one yet.
Yeah.
I think it's just done at the wrong age. But then I guess if they didn't do it pre-period, then I was still shocked when I had no idea what was going on when I got my period. So I don't really think that it helped having...
Did your parents not like did your mum talk to you about it?
No.
Really?
No. It was very much like, oh, got your period, okay, have a pad, it's done. Like...
Really?
Yeah.
So you couldn't like talk to her about it?
No. She was very... It's because like she didn't... I don't know... I don't really know. I don't understand, because there was never the conversation. It was very much like, just don't talk about it, just don't. Like, it's like, pretend it's not a thing. That's what it was like.
I wonder why that is. Because periods are very, like in my culture, periods are regarded as like, I don't want to say holy, but I also don't want to say special. But you're definitely treated differently when you're on your period. And like, for example, you can't go into the kitchen, you can't go into the temple. Yeah.
See, I feel like my culture has like flipped that to be, because I think, generations ago, I think in our culture in general, it's very much like, you're not allowed to go to religious places, but you're not allowed to do these certain things because you're meant to be resting. But after like years and years, it's been turned into this, no, you're forbidden because like you're unclean, or like there's something wrong with you. It's all been twisted, but the mentality remains this, like it's a problem, like there's something wrong,
a negative connotation.
And it was never like that, and that's really annoying, because I'm glad that your culture has like kept that, it seems, but at home it was very much like, no one should know, like this, you should be embarrassed. Yeah, like it wasn't ever, even, I don't know if I'm sharing too much here, but I did an ad with Always on my socials maybe
So
like
cool.
a couple of years ago. I was so pumped for it because the whole thing was about taboos and like making young girls like feel comfortable to talk about it. So I was very passionate about it because my experience of my period growing up has been horrible because I feel like I suffer with a much like more serious version of PMS to begin with. So, and the pains from my period are just excruciating. I've always really struggled with it. So having to make being in so much pain and like being my moods being so out of it's so crazy a secret is so freaking hard. So I was always just labeled as this like really moody girl that permanently had a tummy ache, and that was me. Like it wasn't really seen as anything more than that. And growing up, there was never any conversations around it, and I just felt so. And it was also hard to talk about it to people outside the home because you already have that shame and embarrassment. I think all young girls kind of feel to an extent, even if maybe they've been made to feel comfortable at home. On the like when you talk to people outside, like at school, for example, everyone's like, "Oh, okay, period." Like it's made to be this like weird
gross thing. Yeah.
So you never really feel comfortable with anyone talking about it. So when I got the opportunity to actually do this thing with Always, I was so happy about it. And I think there was at one point I wanted to actually get my sister involved. Just to kind of show that like it's not something to be ashamed about.
Yeah.
My mum was like, absolutely not. She's gonna get bullied at school if anyone sees that. I'm just like,
I don't know. I just feel like that's a scary opinion to pass on to someone so young. Even if like you well and truly believe that like periods are like shameful or embarrassing or whatever.
Stop passing those like fear. But then that's what parents do, isn't it? It's like whatever they think, like they pass on to their kids.
Have you seen that TikTok? It's a TikTok where like this woman, and it's about generational, like probably generational trauma. But this woman, it's like a skit, and this woman's like telling her daughter off for being overweight, like outwardly just being like, "You're ugly, lose some weight," kind of thing. And then it like switches to her as like a millennial mum, and she in front of her daughter is like, "Oh, maybe I won't wear this because I look a bit
I've seen that.
weird." And then the daughter ends up being like
internalizing
the grandma,
that.
yeah, being like, and then to her kid is like, "You're ugly, lose some weight," and it like keeps continuing, even though not every single generation is being like, "You're ugly, lose some weight." It's still being internalized, as you say, in some way or another, where that like insecurity is still being passed on. So it's, I do think it makes me really conscious sometimes of like my insecurities and like how I talk about them and like how I verbalize them in front of people, because am I projecting sometimes? Am I going to project onto my future children like things that I'm insecure about that I don't necessarily talk about?
Yeah, I guess it's scary like even thinking about that, because I'm so self-conscious of like that whole cycle repeating and that whole generational trauma cycle continuing. And I've seen stuff like that, and there's this whole like gentle parenting like notion that, and I love it so
I love it.
They get so much stick for like sharing the ways that they parent, but I think it's the best thing in the world. Like
I'm like low-key like quite jealous of those babies.
I'm jealous of the babies. Their parents take so much care, and like they're so self-aware. They're so like they just care so much to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And they're not like, oh well, this is how I was treated and how I'm treating them is a bit better, so that'll do. Like I feel like that's the generational like pattern that happens. It's like, oh well, I'm not as bad as the generation before me, so they can deal with like a better version. But it's never, the intent is never to end the cycle.
Yeah, exactly. But I also feel like with a lot of parents, maybe subconsciously, and you know what, this goes way past parenthood and like raising children. This goes into any which way anyone's been traumatized. Deep inside a lot of people, they want other people to have the same suffering that they did, to make themselves feel better for the suffering that they got. Like it's almost like I struggled to get here, so you have to struggle too. It's like there's no like, why would I struggle if you don't have to struggle? Like that kind of mindset that exists in like the corporate workplace.
I was going to say, I feel like that's a very like corporate mindset of like people that have made it to the top and they're like, well, you can build your own way up because that's what I had to do.
Yeah.
But I never really think that people think like that in their personal life, because
I think they do.
Especially when it comes to a family dynamic. Like, why would you want your kids to struggle? Why would you want the people you're meant to love and care about? Because I guess in a work sense, I'm like, well, I don't owe anything to them. They don't owe anything to me.
Yeah.
We're kind of strangers at the end of the day. We're all getting a paycheck that we're working for. There's no other tie.
Yeah.
But when it comes to actual personal relationships and family, I feel like it cuts so much deeper.
I think it does, because like, see, if you're a parent, I can imagine, I'm not a parent, by the way, but
just to clarify, we do not have kids.
Just to clarify, we are speaking from the mind. But like, if you're a parent, I can imagine that like, if you did struggle to get to a place in life, you had a kid, I wonder if you in your head think, okay, now you have all of these qualities because of your struggle, so therefore, like, would you want, like, in their point of view, would they want to deprive their kid of not having the struggle because the struggle gave them...
Do they think that deep? I don't know. Really
I'm
struggle
trying to
believe
think through.
that they're like, do you know what? I'm really doing this for the like.
Yeah, I did this for the greater good.
I think they'll probably convince themselves of that afterwards.
Yeah,
but I don't think it's a conscious thing. I think it's just like they've internalized what will happen to them, and they... So I was talking to someone about this, just about like situation that I'm going through at the moment, and they were like, when people go through their own trauma and then they have their own family, there's one of two paths they can take. They can either continue the cycle and just project everything. They don't heal themselves, so they just continue doing exactly what happened to them to the future generation, or they completely break away from that and absolutely end the cycle, but they have to make a really conscious effort to do it. It's not something that you can do subconsciously or just like half-heartedly. You have to really put the effort in, and it's very easy to tell what route people take a lot of the time, because it's such a big effort that you have to make to be someone that ends the cycle, because it's embedded in you if you've grown up like that. And that's why you do, to an extent, have compassion for people that have been through difficult things, and then they're not as bad as, they don't treat people as badly as how they were treated, but they're still a version of, it doesn't make them like the way they act good. It's just not as bad. But then you think, oh, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt because they had a lot worse. But realistically, there are so many people that had trauma times 100, and they still came out and decided, do you know what, it ends with me, and that will, like, I will never make a kid or anyone feel like that. And they make conscious effort every single day to make sure that doesn't happen. And I have a lot of respect for people like that.
I think that's a book. It ends with me, or it ends with...
Yeah, I've heard of that. But I feel like there's a lot of people talking... I've listened to a lot of people's stories where they talk about how they were treated. I think this comes along with the gentle parenting thing of they were treated a certain way, they didn't like it, and now they're actively making a choice to gentle parent and do things properly.
I always have the worry though, like with going the other way and like trying not to do what had happened to you, are you causing a new set of issues? Because there's no right way, like there's no perfect, well, there probably is a perfect way to parent.
I don't think there's a perfect way. Well, I think there's good and there's bad.
Yeah.
I definitely think that. There's like, you can make it black and white, but I do think that you can't wrap your kids in bubble wrap. Like, you might not be the one causing their trauma, but there could be someone else out there that they come across that causes some trauma for them. Like, there could be bad things that happen in their life, but you're not the cause of it.
Yeah.
But I think the parent role is not to be the one causing their trauma. Do you know what I mean? Like, you should be the one supporting them, helping them. And I think that's the difference. There's a lot of parents actually causing the trauma, whereas as kids, their parents don't cause it, but then they have other issues, like whether it's friends, relationships, like third parties that will put them through really horrible times. But their parents should still always be there to like pick up the pieces, and to ease that from them rather than be like a part of the problem for them. Yeah. So I feel like you can't really call yourself a bad parent if you've like done all you could to make your kids feel secure and safe at home and validate them, and teach them to be in tune with their own emotions and act with emotional maturity, and then something bad still happens to them because it's life. But you're not a bad parent because of that. And I think people often think that, oh, if I'm going to parent my kid in a good way and have them like have an easy life, but then they don't know how to handle real life, or they have come across problems, you can still teach a kid to deal with their problems without being a problem for them.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just a bit of a cop-out for parents to be like, oh, well, if we make their life too easy, they're not going to be able to handle real life. And it's like, yeah, there's a difference between being spoiled and people having no boundaries and no discipline. There's a difference between that and then also like just teaching them about life, but in like a humane way.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to beat your kids. You don't have to like, you know, like give them a telling off, scream at them. You don't have to do all these like nasty things that you wouldn't even do to an adult.
Yeah,
you wouldn't do these things to an adult.
Yeah,
so why are you doing it to a little kid?
Oh my god, that's literally like blown my mind a little bit. Like, if you wouldn't do it
that's what
to an
makes
adult,
me
why
really
would you do it
angry.
to a child?
Yeah, you wouldn't, unless you want an actual physical fight with
someone.
someone.
If you beat an adult, you go to
put
jail.
In jail. Well, technically you go to jail for a kid, but who's telling like anyone about that?
How bad is like the violence in our culture? It's actually crazy if you think about it.
It's so normalized as well. It's really messed up, I think.
Like I think that's like one thing I hope I will never do, but I think it's just to think that the generation I've grown up in actually came with like violence for like not remembering your times tables correctly. I'm sorry, my mind is like blowing as we speak. The fact that that's actually happened to us, because it feels so far removed. Like seeing Gen Z and all their boundary setting and like their independence and all this, and I'm like,
it's pretty crazy.
Yo,
yeah,
I was scared of a rolling pin.
It feels foreign. It feels foreign to like say how you feel or like have your feelings respected.
Yeah,
in a way,
or like not be scared of like doing something wrong.
Yeah,
or not be scared of a look. You know.
Those looks. Oh.
Like you shouldn't be feeling like deep fear
in your own home.
In your own home as a child as well. Anyway, are we going to be parents anytime soon?
No. Probably this is why a lot of the time I say I don't want kids, because I am terrified of repeating patterns.
Yeah, same.
And I'm so conscious of that because I know I have the tendencies. Like, how can I not? I've been brought up that way. Like, I can't just switch it off. I can't. There's certain ways that I act because it's like it's not normal, but it's normal to me. So even like the anger thing, it's like, well, all I saw was anger and like rouse and people being angry. So my natural response is when I have that emotion, that's how I act.
Yeah.
Because that's all I saw. Now I am making conscious effort to like undo that, but I don't know when will ever be enough for me to be comfortable with the fact that I'm raising a human, knowing that I have so much work to do on myself. Yeah. But I think that's the right order to do things. Like, to be having kids and then, like, knowing that you're not healed, like, you're not... I don't know if people actually probably even don't even think about it.
But I think we'll have to do that, though, because, like, I don't believe I'll ever reach a point of being like fully healed from all of the things that are wrong with me or whatever. So if I decide to have kids, there's going to be a point where like I am not fully healed. I keep saying the word healed.
You're still like working.
Yeah.
In progress.
Yeah, you're still a work in progress, but you're still actively choosing to have kids. And like, is that
wrong?
Yeah, is that wrong? Because you know that you're not perfect, even though you can't be.
I'm so torn because on one hand I'm like, yeah, well, if I don't feel like I can act appropriately, like not act appropriately, but if like I'm not gonna get triggered or these things, I'm not gonna end up messing up. And the thing is, you will make mistakes. I think what it comes down to is the accountability, and what I've really struggled with is when things have happened, like in my childhood and stuff, and I've been told that didn't happen, or you're overreacting, or, you know, there's just no accountability and there's no like, oh yeah, maybe we shouldn't have done that. I think that's when there's a problem. So if you were like on this journey and even though you're still struggling, but you've had the kids and you maybe act in a certain way that you're not proud of, but then you acknowledge it and you're like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. I'm going to actually correct it and make conscious effort too. So if you were always yelled at and then you yell at them and then you realise, no, I shouldn't have behaved that way. And then you actually go and apologise. Like, I don't know about you, but I've never to this day had a single apology for like anything in my whole growing up, childhood, nothing.
It's not even surprising.
Have you ever had an apology?
I got one recently.
Really?
But even when I got it, I was like... But getting it was a mission. And it was very emotional.
For it. You see, I can't. Yeah. Like, it's just one of those things. Because if it's forced, then it's like, well, did you mean it? You know, if I like had to fight you to...
And also, like, if you've never had one before and suddenly it comes out, I don't know if you would feel like it was genuine. Like, you would question whether it was genuine or not. I don't know if you would be able to take it.
I think what would make me question how genuine an apology was is if it was something was apologized for and then the exact same thing happened again. Yeah. Because then it's like, well, if you were sorry, you wouldn't make the same mistake. Or they'd be the first person to call out, like, yo, I didn't, like, I'm still trying. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Oh my God, on that point, I was actually watching a TikTok about, like, how to apologize. I've always wondered, because you know when, like, people in the public eye do something wrong and they put out these public apologies and they'll put, like, and I'm sorry for making you feel like this, or I'm sorry if you felt... And people always pick apart those apologies. And I've always wondered, okay, so they obviously tried to write that. They thought it was heartfelt. It's been brutally ripped apart by, like, the public. How does a person actually genuinely apologize for something that they've done wrong? And this TikTok came up on my For You page and it was so helpful. It was basically like exactly what you said. It was just like, you've wronged someone, whether it was by accident or not. I'm sorry I wronged you. I'll try not to do that again and be better. And like, that's all you do. That's how you apologize. Whereas most people deflect the apology onto the other person. So be like, incorrect apology would be like, I'm sorry if you feel like that because of what I said. That's like, it's like bouncing back the offense onto you.
Kind of invalidating your like emotion towards like what they did.
Exactly, yeah. And it also, like you said again, takes away any way for me to take accountability for what I did that did wrong you. So it's really, I think apologizing in itself is hard to master, probably, in doing it well. Especially if you're the one who's been wronged, because I feel like you're extra sensitive to how you're apologized to. Yeah. Like, you want it to be sincere, you want it to acknowledge you, and I think most of the time people don't do that right.
But I feel like if you are genuine about your apology, it will come across that way. I don't know, I struggle to believe that if you are genuinely sorry about something, you will say it in the wrong way. Yeah. Because I've apologized for stuff, but I know that when I'm saying sorry because I genuinely mean it, so I don't know, like, it's never come across as like, oh, you know, like,
I think you're completely right.
Backlash from it because it was a genuine apology. I think it's only when it's ingenuine and you're trying to deflect, because your apology isn't actually to say sorry that you've hurt them. You're just saying it because you want to move on from it. Like, you don't actually care.
Or you want the other person to just like...
You just want them to drop it.
Yeah.
There's a big difference in how you'd approach it.
I think you're completely right. It would definitely be it would definitely not be a good apology if you didn't actually mean it.
Because if you mean it, that's what makes a good apology, is it's like authentic, right? Yeah. Well, that's all we have time for, folks.
I'm sorry.
Not sorry.
But that... Oh, yeah. Ingenuinely sorry that this episode has to end because I didn't want it to end. But...
We hope you enjoyed. And we hope you maybe took a little bit of... I don't know.
What did we talk about? Let's do a little recap. We spoke about emotions, like different phases of you trying to fight for like the spotlight in your life. Like your inner child, your teen, and your current...
Oh my gosh, that was this episode.
Peace-loving, person. That's how much we ramble, Farah.
We talked about so much.
And then we spoke about periods, because we're talking about like emotional regulation and stuff as well. And then what did we talk
about? Yeah, that was like the whole anger thing. And then it was about like generational trauma.
Yeah.
Gentle parenting. I could just list off topic after topic after topic. We talked a lot.
I just love this is why I love like conversations with friends. They don't end for me because you like, how do we go from like inner child to periods to saying sorry?
Yeah, we went from inner child to I guess it kind of correlates, but
it correlates in a way that we made it correlate.
And that's not how I would have thought that the episode would have ended.
I saw a TikTok about that as well. It's like when you're talking to your friend and like you just cannot.
I've seen funny ones where it's like you like what the first topic is versus what you end up talking about, and it's so polar opposite. It's funny.
I love those things. But yeah, we are sorry that this episode has to end. We would love it. Oh yeah, we will be back in about 7 days time. And we would love it if you could leave us a review, either on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening.
Or YouTube.
Or
leave
YouTube,
us a little comment.
A little comment. If you relate to anything we said as well, let us know. And you will find us next week.
Bye!
Bye!